Good morning. Welcome to the Gita in Action podcast. My name's Radha, and I'm here with our family of seekers. We have a very dedicated family of seekers today because it is Christmas morning, and we are here. It's Christmas morning, and we're here to study the Gita and to immerse ourselves in spiritual topics. And it's funny, I'm in Chicago this week visiting family for Christmas. And my husband's family lives here, and we haven't been here for a couple of years because we had a baby, and it just life got in the way. So we're here, and I noticed that my husband is just a little bit sad. And I'm like, honey, why are you sad? We came all the way here. We're with your family. It took like a while to get it out of him, and he's just like, it's just so much has changed. So much has changed, and I'm realizing just like how old I'm getting. And it's funny, because the holidays, we get so excited about the holidays and we have such high expectations. And sometimes we just end up feeling a little bit of sadness. The holidays, the end of the year, all the pressures. And it really does just kind of remind us how temporary we are, and how temporary material existence is. The way that your relationships were when you were a kid are not the same as when you're an adult, and not the same. I mean, everything's just constantly changing. And that's the nature of this world. That's the nature of this world. Krishna tells us that in the Gita. That is the nature of this world. Expect that it's temporary. Expect that there's going to be constant change. And that's a big reason that we're all there. We're all here, and we're also attracted to spiritual life because we are spiritual beings. We are spiritual beings. And in that, we all have this need for eternality. We have this craving, this longing, because we know that there's something more. There's something more than just this material existence. And and we crave that connection. And so that's why we come to classes like this. This is why we come together to discuss these spiritual topics, to worship God on wonderful, sacred, holy days like today, to be reminded that there is something more out there for us, that this isn't it. That if you're saddened by this temporary material existence, if the holidays are a tough time for you, there's so much more. There's so much more for us than this. And so it's nice to come together and discuss that, remind each other of that eternal truth, and to attempt to connect with it, because that's what really brings joy to our hearts. Not all the Christmas cookies, although they're pretty delicious. Not all the Christmas cookies, not all the, nice dinners, presents. No, what brings joy to our heart is the connection and the reminder of this eternal relationship that exists for us. So that's what we're going to try to do today. We're going to try to remember together, and in that, maybe lift our holiday spirits. If our spirits are already lifted, then we're just going to fly right out of the room here. So let's start with that. Let's start with our prayer, Shakti, whenever you're ready.
Yes, Hare Krishna. Om Jnana Timirandasya Yananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Karamayam Dandati Sva Pandatikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sadvutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabando Jagat Pate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute. Tapta Kancha Garungi Radhe Vrindavan Ishvari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Prananami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Bhavembhyo Vaishnavyo Namo Namaha Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Siddhanta Swami Iti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Prachayane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashataya Tarayane Namo Mahavaranyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namane Guru Vishi Namaha Namo Brahmanya Devaya Go Brahmanya Devaya Cha Jagad Krishnaya Jagad Hitaya Krishnaya Govindaya Namo Namaha Tapta Kancha Goringi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Prananami Hari Priye Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sri Vasari Guru Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Thank you. Thank you, Shakti. Okay, let's go ahead and start. We are in the 9th chapter. We're in the 9th chapter and we're on text 15. So when you're ready, Stella, do you want to read this text for us?
Yes. Did you say 14?
15.
15, right. Jnana yajnena kapi anye yayanto mam upasate ekavena prita vena bahudra visvato mukam. Others who engage in sacrifice by the cultivation of knowledge worship the Supreme Lord as the one without a second, as diverse in many and in the universal form.
Thank you. So we'll just kind of take a minute to set the context here. Krishna's tying everything together that he's been explaining in the previous verses. So if we just back up a few verses, what he's doing on the broad scale here is he's helping Arjuna and us see that not everyone approaches God from the same level of understanding, and that this diversity of approach is natural. This is natural. So in the previous verse, if we remember, Krishna spoke about the great souls, the Mahatmas. We talked about those who clearly understand who Krishna is and surrender to him. People that are just completely connected to Krishna with undivided devotion. And before that, we talked about those that don't really have any understanding of God. So that there's a spectrum, right? There's an in between, and most people kind of land somewhere in between this place of complete surrender and no understanding at all. And so this verse is introducing that spectrum. And the verses that follow, they'll elaborate on the levels of the spectrum in more details. So Krishna's saying here, he's describing three distinct conceptions of the absolute truth. Three distinct conceptions of the absolute truth. And I'll just list them here, and then we'll go through each one and really unpack it. So the first is the worship of the universal form. Okay. The second is the worship of the demigods, of the controllers of the universe. And then the third is the worship is the worship of, he says, one without a second, the oneness, like recognizing that I'm a spiritual soul and therefore, I'm like God in that. Okay, so I just ran through those really quickly. We're going to go through each one pretty in a lot more detail here. But before we do that, I just want to kind of take a minute and even kind of connect this to the holy day that we're celebrating today, Christmas. Okay, so it's a holy day for many people. And a day when so many people around the world, regardless of tradition or belief, are thinking about love, meaning, possibility, that the divine is not just far away, some abstract concept, but that is close and personal. This day really kind of brings that about, a personal relationship with Jesus. Jesus's birthday. So what Krishna's doing in these verses is he's answering a very human question. Where do I actually find God? Like, is God out there somewhere? Is God an energy? Is God a principle? Is God a person? So this verse is it's like a seed verse. It's planting the seed. It's setting up major themes that are going to unfold later in the Gita, especially later in the later chapters. So that's like the broad view of what we're talking about today. But then to kind of zoom in a little bit more and step through these different conceptions of God, we'll start with the first one that I talked about. The most basic starting point is when somebody looks at the universe and feels overwhelmed by its vastness, by its greatness, by its beauty, by its power. It's like if you've ever been hiking in just like a beautiful place, Colorado or out west. This is what it is for me, and you look around and you see the mountains and maybe there's a little lake in the middle, and it's just like mind-blowingly beautiful and peaceful and perfect. We all probably have a spot in nature that we can think of like this. Some people it's maybe the ocean. It's nothing like the ocean to make you, recognize how a power so much greater than yourselves. So this thought naturally arises, this is so great. This must be divine. And at this stage, this bigness becomes associated with greatness, and greatness becomes associated with God. Since the universe is the biggest thing that we can perceive, it becomes identified with the absolute truth. So this can be kind of a starting point philosophically to understanding God. And we call this the universal form. The universe itself becomes a way to meditate on God. So like the sun and the moon are his eyes, the mountains are his bones. And so here, meditation is not focused on a personal form per se, but on just pervasiveness and magnitude. God is conceived through the immensity of the cosmos and the sense that everything is interconnected. And the thing here with this conception of the absolute truth, it's still very much material because we're connecting to the material energy that we see around us. But it's still a very powerful and meaningful starting point. So it's going to lift our consciousness beyond just the narrow, self-centered concerns that we all have, and it just broadens our conceptions a little bit. It opens the heart towards something that's vast and sacred and greater than ourselves. So this could be like from a philosophical perspective, like a step one kind of conception of getting out of this conception that we're the center, and seeing, sitting by the ocean and recognizing how small we are. These kinds of thoughts, these kinds of ideas. So seeing God in that. Okay, so then the next one we'll move to is the demigods. Okay, so as consciousness begins to evolve, a person begins to notice something else. So they say, yes, the universe is vast, but it's also like remarkably organized. It's rain is falling in patterns. The sun is rising with the consistency. Natural laws operate with precision. So it's like life doesn't just feel big or awe-inspiring. It feels intelligently arranged. So it's kind of recognizing that there's bigger controllers out there than ourselves. And this realization, it naturally leads to people starting to relate to different forces at work in the world. The force of knowledge, the force of creativity, the force of healing, the force of abundance. So this is where the idea starts to arise that there must be some controllers behind nature. So we see the universe is vast. That's amazing. It must be divine. But even more than that, there's some what's that word? Periodicity? I don't know. There's some like we see things happening that almost seem like they're timed, you know. It's and we start to understand, okay, there's some controllers. There's some controllers behind what's going on here. I am not the ultimate controller. There are some higher forces at play here. So at this stage, a person acknowledges that there's an ultimate reality, and that ultimate reality. Oh, just one second. Somebody just joined. So they acknowledge that there's an ultimate reality, and that ultimate reality is expressing itself through various controllers or representatives. This is where we say the demigods. But the understanding isn't fully clear yet. They're not so connected to the source of all of that. They're just recognizing that there's greater forces at play than oneself. So there's an intuitive sense that these forces may be connected to something higher, maybe something absolute, but maybe not completely developed yet. Just kind of recognizing, okay, there's greater powers than myself out there that are existing. So it's still very much so a developing conception. But what's happening here is that someone's awareness is growing, that the universe isn't just random, and that intelligence and purpose lie behind what we're experiencing. So it's just like steps closer to a personal conception of God, and to a relationship with one God, with the absolute truth. So then that's step 2. So then step 3 would be going beyond matter. So this is as reflection deepens even further, a person starts to recognize something essential. And that is, we were just talking about at the beginning of class, that all of this is temporary, that the universe is temporary. Even the controllers of nature are temporary. And so at this point, a very personal question arises. If everything I see around me is changing and is temporary, then what about me? Who am I really? And this question marks a major shift in consciousness. So it's no longer just about understanding the world. It's about understanding the self. And this is where the idea of spiritual oneness comes from. It's a sincere search for something eternal to stand on in a world that's constantly shifting. Again, philosophically, this is like your level 3 realization. Look, there's definitely like the vastness of the universe is spectacular. And there's definitely some order to it. There's some controllers that are keeping the affairs of the universe running. There's some higher intelligence. But wait a minute, everything that I'm seeing here is ultimately temporary, is ultimately changing. Right? Recognizing that again, I have this longing for something that is eternal, and that's not random. That longing exists because I am eternal. That longing exists because I am eternal. So a person starts identifying with this spiritual essence, and they arrive at this idea that I'm spiritual, and that spiritual reality and I are one. So I'm qualitatively the same as God. Qualitatively, not quantitatively, because we're much smaller. We're like sparks in a fire. But I have this spiritual essence. This is realization of the self. And we've talked about this several times. We talked about this conception. This conception in and of itself is not offensive. Like this is a part of God realization, recognizing this. Recognizing that oneself is spiritual and connected to Brahman, right? Spiritual reality. This is a genuine and meaningful realization. It's reflective of this deep desire to move beyond material identity and suffering. So it's like we're starting to get situated in our rightful place. But when we've talked about the problem with this conception, it's when someone goes one step further and they make this like the all-knowing conception. Like they conclude that God's form is false and illusionary, and that one must go beyond God's form to reach the truth. So that dismissal of God's form altogether is the real issue. You know, it's not the search for oneness in itself, because we it's important to realize that we all have this spiritual essence. It's important to realize that we are spiritual beings. It's just as our consciousness evolves, we come to this realization. But we don't want to think that that's it, that we just merge into God, we're all one, and that's because, as we talked about, that doesn't leave any room for relationship with God. Okay? So this is kind of the step 3, realizing that, hey, there must be something beyond this temporary material existence. There's something that is eternal, and recognizing that we are actually that qualitatively. So as we kind of introduce these, there's different ways to walk through these conceptions of the absolute truth, to understand the hierarchy. So we talked about it philosophically, from matter to spirit. So when we connect with when we talked about the universal form, you know, the impressive material manifestation, this is recognizing that there's bigness out there. Everything's so big and great. God is big and great. You know, this must be God. And then recognizing, hey, there's a lot of order to what's going on around me. It's not just like random. It's super intelligent. You know, there must be some conscious beings with conscious control. And then from this material conception of reality, we start to understand the pure spiritual reality beyond matter. That's like step 3. So it goes from material perception to intelligent control to transcendental spiritual identity. Is everybody with me here? We're just going through the conceptions of God as our consciousness begins to evolve. So it's an evolution of thought. You know, I'm not just this body. There must be something beyond matter. I am spiritual. So this is the philosophical hierarchy as our conception of God deepens. And then there's the devotional hierarchy, which is actually like completely flipped. And Prabhupada emphasizes this a lot, because the Gita's conclusion is not just knowledge. We're not just trying to understand God, but we're trying to be in relationship with God. So from a standpoint of devotion, the order flips. You know, worshiping oneself is actually the weakest devotion. Because if I worship me, then that leaves no room for relationship. And then worshiping demigods, you know, the controllers of the universe, this is more developed. You know, there's a worshiper and a worshipee, or a worshiper and a worshipped. And then when you get to worshiping the universal form, you know, this is even more favorable for devotion, because God is clearly greater. You know, it inspires humility, reverence. So even though the universal form is philosophically lower, it's devotionally higher, because it's encouraging this heart-to-heart dynamic. And that's really the essence. That's why what we're trying to get here. This is the conclusion of the Gita is this relationship with God, to seek this relationship with God. Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender to me. This is what Krishna is telling us to do. Right? This is what he's looking for. Because this bhakti, it requires these things. It requires these 3 things. It requires a worshiper, it requires a worshipped, and it requires a relationship between them. And without distinction, there's no devotion. Right? It's just conceptual. It's just a concept. So it's like the difference between knowing about someone. Again, you look up their profile online. They look like a pretty nice person. You know, the difference between knowing someone and loving someone. It's so different. You can analyze a person biologically, you know, philosophically, psychologically, and still have no relationship with them. Yeah, we do that all the time. There's careers built around this, which are helpful. which are extremely helpful and needed. You know? But it's much different. Understanding a person biologically, philosophically, psychologally, it's much different than having a relationship with them. And that's where Krishna's trying to take us with all of this. That's where Krishna's trying to take us with all of this and show us that is ultimately the most important. Because devotion is not just about understanding, again, it's about relationship. And relationship requires two. So that's why, so all throughout the Gita, we'll see in Prabhupada's purports, he's really focusing on this through a devotional lens because it's the one that leads us not to just knowledge of God, which is important. I mean, knowledge assists us. Knowledge of God really assists us in our spiritual journey. But where we're ultimately trying to get in that journey is love of God. And that's what Prabhupada is trying to show us. And that's what the Gita is revealing to us as it takes us through this progression and meets us wherever we're at. It's really beautiful. So Krishna's, he's not judging these approaches, he's just mapping them. You know, everyone's searching, everyone starts somewhere. But the closer our understanding comes to seeing Krishna as a real person that we can know, that we can love, that we can serve, the more complete and satisfying our spiritual life becomes. And bhakti doesn't just erase the earlier conception, but it fulfills them by bringing knowledge, worship, and relationship together in their fullest form. So we're learning, ultimately, we're learning to see God in everything, in everyone, in every circumstance. And we're learning to develop a personal relationship with him through that. And this is the process of bhakti. And this knowledge I'm sharing, you know, if you've kind of like zoned in and out of this knowledge is just intended to help us do that. That's the whole purpose of this knowledge, of understanding these different conceptions. It's just helping us to get there, to arrive at this place, of love of God. What do you guys think? What do you think, Stella? Thank you I'm so glad you have something to share.
Um, yeah, I was really thinking, um how beautiful, for all of Christianity's faults and everything, how beautiful it was to, have this little baby come, because it's so easy to love a baby.
Mm.
And it really introduces that personal love. And at Christmas time, like our third child was born on the 17th, right before Christmas. And I we named her Irene Maria, which is the peace of Mother Mary. And it's like I was really thinking about Mary carrying the baby, and divinity entering the world through a person. And so I felt so grateful to the Lord that I was born in a family that was devoted to this, personal conception, um, that God can enter as a person. He is a person. I mean, Christianity is really vague on the God the Father being a person, but at least there's an entry into feeling that love. Like, when you think about the little baby in the manger and everyone coming to see him and um, all that kind of stuff. I really love that story. It's so beautiful. And, we shouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater, like all
Mm-hmm.
the 2000 years of weirdness of Christianity. That's like the gem or the heart of it really is God came to us as a tiny child for us to love. And it's so easy to move into bhakti from there, I think. At least it was for me.
Yeah. Thank you, Stella. What a beautiful realization and what a glorious meditation. God came to us as a little baby to teach us these things, to teach us how to live lives of love and compassion and how to connect with him in that. Beautiful. Thank you, Stella. Should we go to the next verse? 16. Share my screen. Let me just get it up here. Okay, when you're ready, Stella.
Aham katur aham yagna svadaham aham asodam mantroham aham evakyam aham agnir aham hutam. But it is I who am the ritual, I the sacrifice, the offering to the ancestors, the healing herb, the transcendental chant. I am the butter and the fire and the offering.
Thank you. So in this verse, he's again talking about sacrifice. And we talked about sacrifice in the 4th chapter. Remember, we've had kind of similar verses to this, but he's taking it to an even deeper level. He's saying, I'm the ritual, I'm the sacrifice, I am what is offered, I am the healing herb, I am the mantra, I'm the butter, the fire, the active offering itself. So in other words, he's saying, nothing in the sacrifice is separate from me. Nothing in the sacrifice is separate from me. If we've ever seen like a Vedic fire ceremony, or this, it's beautiful. You have all these, you have ghee, you have incense, you have herbs, you have smells, you have lights. It's and from material terms, it's beautiful. There's a lot going on there. There's a person performing the ritual, and from material lens or eyesight, it can easily feel just like a bunch of external ingredients. If you're new to the culture, kind of strange things happening, interacting with one another. But Krishna's telling us, he's giving us a completely new way to frame it, to see it. So he's saying what may look like a material process, it's actually a manifestation of the absolute truth. That the fire isn't separate from him, the mantra isn't separate from him, the offering isn't separate from him. Even the act of offering itself isn't separate from him. So this is really beautiful. He's building on even teachings that he taught back in the 4th chapter. He's explaining in the 4th chapter he talked about how all the elements of sacrifice are spiritual, are Brahman. The emphasis was on understanding the spiritual nature behind everything in the action. But Krishna's taking it one step further. He's not saying this, it's just spiritual. He's saying, I am that. Because when we talk about a spiritual conception is just like understanding that I am spiritual. I'm a spiritual essence. I am a spirit soul. That's what I am. And that I'm qualitatively one with God in that. I have that same spiritual essence. But when we take it one step further, a bhakti understanding is that I have this personal relationship with God. This personal relationship with God exists for me. And this is as our consciousness evolves, as we practice spiritual life, we come to this understanding. So what was once understood in an impersonal way, when we talked about it earlier, it becomes a lot more personal, Krishna centered. It's the same truth, but it's becoming clearer, more intimate, more relational. So again, we're seeing here how the Gita is unfolding progressively at different stages. At different stages, seekers understand the absolute truth differently. So, but the point here is that when devotion enters the picture, everything becomes clear. What once was seen as just spiritual, it's now recognized as God himself. So Krishna's not introducing something new here. He's revealing what was already there, but just in a fuller way. And as we continue through the chapter, he's going to expand this vision even more. Explaining how he pervades every aspect of existence, not just sacrifice. And that's where we're going. And so the message here is simple, but it's profound. When we act in consciousness of Krishna, nothing is merely material anymore. When we act with God in mind, nothing is material anymore. everything becomes connected, everything becomes more meaningful and alive with this spiritual presence. And this is beautiful. Again, this is what's available for us in this personal relationship with God. And Stella, you're sharing, I'm just now this whole time I'm just picturing little baby Jesus. And it's because the Christian conception is it's so beautiful. It's bhakti.
It
Right?
is
You
bhakti.
Yeah, it's like you can be a Christian, you can have a personal relationship with God and be a bhakti. I mean, that's what it is. Bhakti is just loving devotion for God. It's a process that takes us there. So Jesus, is your God. Beautiful. You worship, you have a personal relationship with Jesus. Perfect. It's such a personalist religion.
And it was so wonderful too to come to uh Krishna consciousness and learn that Krishna came as a little baby too, because it's so easy to love him that way. And
Yeah.
I mean, it just was like so uh seamless that way, just like, oh yeah, of course. He comes as a little baby and everybody loves him.
Yeah. Yeah, when I studied Christianity when I was a kid, I'd feel like there was a lot of emphasis on Jesus and Jesus's teachings and following Jesus, but the different conceptions of God I really appreciate in the Vedas,
Yes.
because it really brings it's like holistic, understanding really that God is everywhere, that God is energy, that the order of the universe is God,
Yeah.
that God is in the heart of every person.
Yeah.
It really brings it full circle. So these conceptions, even though they're presented here as kind of being like stepping stones to this realization of personal relationship with God, they also contribute greatly to that relationship. They really make it holistic. So um yeah, it's beautiful that way. It's like such a detailed map. The Vedas are just such a detailed map to this place of love of God. It transforms the way that you see everything, the way that you interact with matter, with people, and it's such a deep way when we
And it
really
really
come to.
I feel like it too. It's like all the beautiful hymns of Christmas. I mean, they're so beautiful and they last so long because they are God conscious and very imbued with bhakti. But listening to the hymns and the words of the hymns when you know about Krishna, it just makes them even more beautiful, which of course Krishna is so good at making things even more beautiful.
Right.
Like ever increasing its beauty. So now some of the some of the hymns, like even Silent Night and the uh some of the German hymns or Ave Maria, they're just so more intensely beautiful because you know the supreme truth.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. So so yeah, if you're a Jesus follower, that's not a problem, because we say, Jesus is the Son of God.
Yeah.
God is Krishna. So it fits perfectly.
You just fold them in.
You
I
just
mean,
fold.
I that's the thing I would never, I mean, that's how, that's like, how could you, for me, how could I reject what brought me to God in the first place? You
Mm,
know, like um, and that's what Tamal Krishna Goswami said, just add Krishna. Whatever your culture is, whatever, like where you can find that sweetness of the Lord, just add Krishna. You don't have to leave out Jesus, you just fold him in.
yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much, Stella. Should we do one last verse? It's not very long. Can do 17.
Okay. Pitamasya jagato matadata pitamaha Vedyam pavitram okara Riksamayajur evacha. I am the father of this universe, the mother, the support, and the grandsire. I am the object of knowledge, the purifier, and the syllable Om. I am also the Rig, the Sama, and the Yajur Vedas.
Thank you. So in this verse, Krishna is widening the lens even more. He's saying, I'm the father of the universe, the mother, the support, the grandsire. I'm all these things. What he's saying here is that everything that supports us, everything that purifies us, everything that gives us meaning, it ultimately comes from him. Now, in this time of year, many people are thinking about their family, their parents, their grandparents, the people who shaped their lives. We're spending lots of time with these people, a lot of us. And Krishna's using that same language here. He's not asking us to dismiss those relationships. He's asking us to recognize their source. Again, as we've been talking about a lot today, in Christianity, Christmas is the moment God becomes personal. He enters the world in a form people can directly relate to. So, in a similar way, Krishna is reminding Arjuna that he's not just an abstract principle, that he's the loving source behind the guidance, behind the nourishment, the protection that we already experience. He's a God that we can actually have a relationship with. So when Krishna says he's the father and he's the mother of the universe, he's pointing us to this deeper reality beyond all care and nurture. The love that comes to us through people, the wisdom that comes through teachers, the strength we receive in difficult moments. None of it is accidental. It all carries his energy. So this is the invitation here, the invitation to develop this spiritual vision, to see life not as disconnected events, but as a network of relationships that are ultimately rooted in one in one loving source. I mean, living too, in one loving source. This is God vision. This is understanding everything as being connected to God. What do you think, Katie?
Hi, Ball. I think it's very not much, but but a short one. But this is just making me think how beautiful it is that we get reminded of the essence, you
Mm.
know? And I was thinking back on some memories of really enjoying growing up Catholic, and not really understanding the prayers and the words and all of the what was going on and what was meant, but really enjoying the feelings and the surroundings and the vibe and the kind of delivery of the essence, which actually is the bhakti of it, um, and I'm really appreciative that our line just is so accepting, and um it doesn't ostracize, it doesn't make you want to, like, there's no regrets about your experiences in the past, but just yeah, shows that folding in and that reminder of the essence, and that is our connection to people of other faiths, and Krishna is that essence, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So nicely said. I feel like I've actually healed a lot of wounds that came from when I practiced Christianity through this path by coming to understand that more. Like where I was like totally turned off of church. I was not interested in going to church. Now it's like something I look forward to when I go. It's beautiful because you can see that. I mean, churches are holy places. It's God is not unique to just one religion or culture or I mean, God is everywhere. And when we have personal relationship with God, when people gather in a place to and worship God, God is there. And it's beautiful to be able to see that and experience that through different, religions and cultures and ways of worship. Doesn't mean that it has to be ours necessarily, but we can still experience it, in these hymns like Stella's talking about, like you're talking about, these songs, these prayers. It's like, you can still experience it. You don't have, it's not like you just turned off because you've chosen one path and so nothing else penetrates you. It's like, no, God's everywhere. We can still appreciate it. Thank you. Shakti, what do you think?
Hey, Bo. Um, so I was brought up Jewish, and very early on, I felt that there was, I felt there was no, like, uh, for example, every week you would have like a feast. It wasn't called Rosh Hashanah. I forget what it was called. And you would read like from the book and backwards, and the book, because the book is different than ours, so you would read the book and it was made backwards. That's how it was. And there was bat mitzvahs and bas mitzvahs for girls, and bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs for boys. And the way that it ended up was that my brothers all got bar mitzvah, um, and the girls did not. The girls had sweet 16s. Like it wasn't as important for them to understand the culture of the religious culture. And I thought to myself, like, why is that? Why am I not as important as the three? Because I had three brothers. Why am I not as important as them to understand the culture, this loving culture that like I want to understand? And so I, from very young, I guess I understood that like the women were not so important and the women were meant to stay home, take care of the kids, have lots of kids, as many as you could have, and and just follow the rules of the religious culture, right? So I thought I didn't love that. That was something that kind of turned me off because I didn't really feel like it wasn't like a we're getting together. It was,
It didn't make you feel more connected. Made you feel
yeah,
more ostracized.
yeah, yeah. And it was a very like it still is a very interesting culture. But it wasn't one that I could really ever connect to.
Mm,
And I remember once we were going into the pool and we were swimming, whatever, and the women were swimming with their daughters in like full on clothes, like
mm,
pants and shirts, and I said, "Oh my God." In my head I just thought like, "Wow, that's got to be really hot." But that's how they do. They don't show anything. They swim in their clothes and they wear wigs to cover
mm,
the tops of their head.
mm,
And I didn't know much about the religion because I was really my parents didn't share it with me, which
mm,
hmm, I don't know, part of me felt really, I guess, angry and hurtful because I would have liked to have learned about my religion and made the
mm,
choice on my own as to where
mm,
I wanted to take it from there.
mm,
But I wasn't given that chance really.
mm,
And so, I don't know what I would have chosen. I don't know where I would be. You know, I think everything happens for a reason. So,
Mm.
That being said, I'm meant to be here in Krishna consciousness. I'm meant to be on this call.
Mm.
I'm meant to be with these beautiful people,
Yeah.
and uh, and that is what it is. Now, there's no like negative. I don't have negative thoughts towards them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like I don't have like no. It's just I guess just I wish I would have learned more about it. That's all.
Mm.
You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. So much of our conception of God is very heavily influenced by the people that taught it to us. The people that brought us in, that we spent time with, that introduced it to us. So much. And that's what happens a lot with religions too, over time and circumstances and cultures. Sometimes even the essence of like we see this in Christianity or other, religions, the essence of the teachings gets gets diluted or gets kind of gets shifted in different ways according to the culture and the time, and somehow people people kind of lose touch with it to some extent. And it's not everywhere and it's not everything, and it's this is very kind of a complex topic, but that happens. So it's nice on days like this to even just come back to the essence, like Katie was saying, and see that, see how universal the absolute truth is. See how universal God's message is. Love your neighbor. You know, love it's just like these things are universal truths, and when you're really sitting in it, when you feel more connected. When you feel more connected, you feel more uplifted. And when you feel anything that's not that, then it's just the material energy coming through. And sometimes the material energy comes through so intensely that it kind of even covers the essence. And then it's just like the essence isn't wrapped in this like deep, thick shell of material energy, and we've kind of lost it. We can hear it sometimes, or but it's just really deep in there. And yeah, but I love what you said too. We have to trust that God is in control of our path, and he's putting different people and different opportunities in front of us and teaching us different things, bringing us close to him through whatever path is really resonating truest with our hearts. And he's doing that. He's doing that. And we're all here today because we felt some kind of something through the truths that we learn in the Gita. And that's what he's doing, just little by little. He's just pulling us closer and closer to him. What do you think, Narayani?
Hare Krishna.
Hare
I
Krishna.
I was thinking, it's interesting because the way I grew up in East Germany with like, socialism, communism being preached, I didn't grow up with any religion or any spiritual path. And it's odd because when I hear you all sharing about your upbringing, it's almost like that I want to say, oh my gosh, did I miss out when I was a child? But also, I didn't feel like I was missing out. I was actually, the way I was brought up, I thought, okay, that's that. And, everything else is not what I want, to say it in the most decent way. Um, but then I feel very grateful that even though I was brought up basically believing in nothing or just mainly in myself and believing in kind of like a really odd way of politics, how this was preached to us, that I feel very grateful that I was still able to somehow find myself in association of devotees, finding this bhakti path and finding a guru and finding many gurus and finding so wonderful people and friends that came into my life and stay now in my life. And yesterday I was driving in my car and we have this, and maybe you have that too. I mean, according to your currency, you're a very religious country. And And we have this advertising of like, I'm not sure if it's Bible verses or if it's something, it's just very plain. It's like a blue background and yellow writing. And it's something about, and then it says, I think the Bible or something in the corner. And it's messages, something like, basically like, if you believe in me, then I will always be with you or so. And for the last years, when I saw them the first time, I thought, oh my gosh, this is really I'm not going to say those two words, those two letters. This is just, I didn't agree with this. I was just like condemning all religion and everything. But for the last years, since I've been on this path, I read them and I look at them and I feel like this is Krishna, this is Krishna speaking in Christianity. And it's beautiful. And I see messages in there. Yesterday I saw this message. It was something along the line like, if you're with me or if you believe in me, then I will be with you even after death. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is amazing. This is so wonderful that, and I'm mind
Hold
blown
it and show you
that
something.
I can see things like bhakti messages in this like Bible advertising. And in a way, maybe I did not really miss out because I'm still hearing about Christianity and about God through different lenses. And that's wonderful. Merry Christmas. Hare Krishna.
Beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, this is what happens as our consciousness starts to evolve and we become true essence seekers, is that we see this essence all around us. And in that, we start to appreciate it because we really understand what the essence is, right? The essence is love for all living beings, acknowledgement of my spiritual nature and qualitative sameness with God, and my neighbor's qualitative sameness with God. And in that we come to love and appreciate everyone and everything. And we see that essence, that same message in different teachings. This teaching, nobody has a monopoly on these teachings. And we can appreciate them. And in that way, just like Stella's saying, we can celebrate Christmas today, even if you're not Christian, because we see that essence and it reminds us of God. We appreciate that. It's really beautiful. Thank you. Thank you all for sharing.
Hare Krishna.
Stella, yes, great.
Yeah, I really relate to much of what Narayani Prabhu is saying. So Hare Krishna, I really appreciate that. Our parents also were not religious; they were communists. And so we too were raised. I was raised in a political, not a religious background, and definitely religion was the opiate of the people. That was a very clear message. We didn't have a Bible in the house, Old or New Testament. There were many handbooks of Marxism and like that, and that has to do with parents' background. But one thing I also wanted to say that even on Christmas, what always keeps bringing me back to Krishna consciousness, which was actually my first faith, I guess you could say, the first spiritual book or religious book I ever read was the Bhagavad Gita, as as a child, really, and I really connected with that. But what keeps bringing me back to Krishna consciousness is, what you, Radha, is saying. The word that keeps coming up is relationship, and I have to say that it's something I don't find so directly in any other tradition. In certainly, it's so beautiful, and today especially, one can develop a loving relationship with Jesus. But Jesus is the Son of God, and I don't know any other religion or any other faith or tradition where we get so much information about God the Father, about Krishna. And I'm often wondering, even in the last few weeks of class, like you spoke about jnana and bhakti and where the two separate and where the two connect. And like, what is the role of knowledge? What is the role of jnana in developing our bhakti? And, so often we see those as almost like two different paths. But I love in Christian consciousness, we have, I mean, we have like volumes and volumes and volumes and volumes of what God the Father is like. You know, what would and so I think there's a difference of Jesus coming to us as a baby and Krishna coming to us as a baby, and they're both such beautiful experiences. But I love that we get to know so much about Krishna and Radharani, and like, how can we love someone if we don't even know who they are? And so I find that relationship and that love more challenging in other traditions, and it's so accessible to us in Krishna consciousness, and I just love that. So I think there is something that stands out about Krishna consciousness among all others, that it goes not rejecting any of them, but going beyond where they're at, to saying, yes, we actually can know God the Father very lovingly and very intimately. So that anyway, that's my 2 cents. Hare Krishna.
Wow, that was amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you. It's perfect. I think that's a perfect note to end on, actually. That really just kind of sums everything up that we've been talking about today. So the invitation today is really not to figure everything out. It's just simply to notice connection, to notice where the love is flowing to us, and notice where it's flowing through us. And Krishna's messages in these verses, it's none of it's accidental. None of it's accidental. So thank you all for being here today. This hour just flew by, as it always does. Thank you for spending your Christmas morning with us here today.
Thank you so very much for
Monday.
taking this time.
Definitely.
Yes, meant a lot to us.